What is up, YouTube? I am going to get comfortable because I'm sick, and I figured I might as well be comfortable while I'm talking about this. So, I look fat at this position. Anyway, this is all going to have to be one take because um, I don't have my other computer, which has all the software and stuff, to edit everything and make it look all pretty and stuff like that. But if you're looking at the title of this video, you're probably here because you're wanting to get one of these, which, if you don't know, in the Air Force, this is a bar. Second lieutenants are typically called butter bars because butter is yellowish kind of, and this is kind of like yellowish gold. Anyway, you can figure that out. Different ways to get it, right? I'm going to talk about one way, particularly, which will be OTS, which is known as Officer Training School. So there's different ways, such as ROTC. ROTC basically is where you go through college and you do a lot of your military training while you're in college. So you learn your drill, you learn your customs and courtesies, you learn your Air Force historical information, stuff like Airman's Creed, the Articles of the Code of Conduct, all that good stuff. You learn while you're in college, and the Air Force will actually pay for your college, and then when you graduate, you'll be commissioned as a second lieutenant and all that jazz. The other route would be like the Air Force Academy, where the Air Force Academy actually is your college. That's very highly selective. I have family that have gone through the Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs, Colorado, and like I said, it's a very selective process, but you go through it and then you're commissioned and you actually graduate with your degree and so forth and so forth. And then the third route is typically, I say typically, but you have to have a bachelor's degree to be qualified to go through OTS. And so Officer Training School, getting a little bit better comfortable position. Officer Training School is located in Maxwell, or at Maxwell Air Force Base in Montgomery, Alabama. Now, I'll start off with the process of getting into OTS because that's pretty selective as well, right? It's essentially the Air Force's needs that determine whether you're going to get selected to go to Officer Training School. So my process started back in November of 2014. My bachelor's is in mechanical engineering, and I thought, hey, I want to go in as a pilot, all right, but I don't want to go active duty. I want to go reserves. So I want to fly part time, essentially. Now, I don't have any previous experience. I don't have any flight hours. I don't have things that would give me a little bit more of a competitive edge when applying. So, as you'll find out, I'm not surprised that the story went the way that it did. When you join the Air Force, like say you're starting out and you have a bachelor's degree and you finish college, and you're like, okay, I want to join the Air Force. As an officer, what they're going to do is the first step is you're going to call a recruiter. They're going to run you through some, what's called a pre-qualification kind of run through of questions on the phone. Now, I'm a bit fuzzy on this, and all this is just from memory. Obviously, I don't have any notes, so they're going to ask you questions like if you've done drugs. Basically, big questions of stuff that is not going to, it's going to make you non-eligible to go into the Air Force. Like if you're a felon, obviously, that's not going to be a good thing. If you have a bunch of crap on your record, or if you're a regular drug user, they're not going to want to bring you into the Air Force. And that's a step that is before the recruiter spending time with you and doing all the paperwork to start the process, right? Because they want to know that it's time well invested on their part. They don't want to just bring someone in and then be like, oh, well, you're a felon, and then all that paperwork and all that time spent, which is a military resource, is just wasted. They don't want to do that. So let's say you get past that. Then the next step, what I did is I went in, spoke with the recruiter, and being that I was trying to go for a pilot in the reserves, I spoke to a reserve recruiter for officers. So there's different types of recruiters, and you might have to look that up on your own to learn the different types. Um, so I spoke to a reserve recruiter, and she had started getting me set up on the paperwork and whatnot. And for pilots or pilot recruits, there's additional tests and additional things that you have to do. Like you have to have a different flight medical. It's more in depth. They have to check for a lot of other things because you're going to be flying a plane. And then another test is going to be your PCASM. I forget what that all stands for, but it's a pilot composite score for aviation skills. Something like that. You'll learn in the Air Force. There's so many acronyms, but that pilot score is based off of your AFOQT, which is the Air Force Officer Qualifying Test, and it's based off of your TBAS, which is your Test for Basic Aviation Skills, which is a different test. I can't actually tell you the details about it because I signed a thing saying I can't talk about it. And it's essentially that's what it is. It tests your aviation skills, and then it's everything else. It's a composite score, and that's something entirely. That's just for pilots. So if you're not going a pilot, you'll go in and, like I said, you do your pre-qual, and then you'll fill out all this paperwork, all the stuff for like background. What else is there? There's background. There's just a whole slew of things, and it takes a lot of work. It's a lot of work for a recruiter, so make sure to thank your recruiter as you're going through the process. After that, what they do is they'll schedule you for the AFOQT. The AFOQT, Air Force Officer Qualifying Test, is a test that tests a whole slew of stuff that's important to the Air Force, right? If you're enlisting, not going the officer route, you'll take what's called the ASVAB, and don't even ask me what that abbreviation is. I think it's a skills assessment baseline. No, I don't even know. That's pretty sad. Google it. Google it. If I can't tell you, Google it. So, because you're not going enlisted, if you're going the officer route, you're going to take the AFOQT. And that test will have stuff like mathematics. It'll have stuff like, if you can read charts. It just goes over everything, your comprehension level. It's almost like a test to see where your strengths are, and there is a minimum level that you do have to meet to qualify, right? To qualify to go for a board, because the main purpose and everything is to go before a board. And the board is essentially what selects you and says, yes, we want this guy to go to officer training school and be commissioned as a second lieutenant. That's really the cut and dry scenario. So your AFOQT, you have to pass that with a certain level of score. Now, your score is going to determine, especially for pilots, they want people to have a high pilot score. So one of the sections on the score is pilot. They want that to be really high, just like they want the navigator to be really high. And these measure different things. They measure, pilot has a lot of math. That score is taken up from how well you do on a lot of the math in the AFOQT. So that's going to be important. If you're going for a different job, you want to have as good a scores as you can all along the test, all throughout. And we won't get into those. Maybe if y'all want, I could do a video that's more in depth on kind of the AFOQT. Just depends. This is kind of a baseline runner, video. So after you take the AFOQT, they're going to say, okay, well, he's qualified on that test. The next step is going to be MEPS, which is, correct me if I'm wrong, Medical Entrance Processing Station? Something like that? Military Entrance Processing Station. So I went through MEPS, and MEPS is where they check you out physically, top to bottom, head to toe. They're going to check your vision. They're going to check your blood work. I mean, you talk about vials of blood being taken. They're gonna check all that. They're gonna check just can you stand on your toes? Can you wiggle your fingers? Just a whole range of things. Urinalysis. They're gonna do all these things to make sure physically that, hey, we don't have a guy coming in here that's like got cancer, or that's gonna die in a couple of weeks after we get him in, or that's gonna have problems like asthma. Or not saying that asthma is going to disqualify you, but they want to make sure, because they're investing in you. You're essentially going to be property of the government, and they want to protect their investment, so they want to pre-screen you. After your AFOQT and after MEPS, right, we've got those two things, along with the pre-qualification, so technically three things, but you can't get to the other two unless you have the first one. After those two things, I had to sit down with a captain and interview with a captain. Now, my experience is going to be different with others. Some people I've heard have had to interview with multiple people. I had to interview with one captain. And then what they're going to check is they're going to check who are you as a person, right? Because anybody can go and meet paper requirements, but they're going to check for you, do you have a leadership potential? Do you have the potential to be someone that is going to push through and that's going to carry on with the tasks and the orders that are given to you? Are you going to be a person, like it says in your commission, that is going to faithfully discharge the duties upon the office upon which they're about to enter? So that's what they're looking for. They want to know you as a person. They don't want someone to be, like to run away from problems, and then they're not going to put that person in leadership. So it's a one-on-one. Customs and courtesies and all that. I mean, it's they want someone that's professional too. So you take those three things, right? I'll do it like this. Those three things. And then also one of the hidden things that's going to go in your package, and this is the package you'll hear recruiters talk about that goes before the board, is going to be your letters of recommendation. These are important because who they're from also makes a big difference. I mean, if you have a letter of recommendation from Joe from, Pizza Hut, I'm sure that's great. I'm sure Joe's a great guy, but it's not going to hold that much weight when it's going before, a colonel that's going to be reviewing all of these. I mean, what's Joe going to know about military life and leadership and stuff like that? So my my letters of recommendation were from, I had a lieutenant colonel that was in charge of a special ops, squadron. I had a World War II bomber pilot letter of recommendation, and I also had a Navy captain that was a jet fighter pilot as a letter of recommendation, just to name some. So I think those helped, along with had a good interview. My AFOQT scores were good, and my MEPS was clean as a whistle. Physically, I was fit enough. So, as I was saying, the first board I went to, because there were multiple for me, was reserve pilot. I didn't get selected for that one, just because I also hadn't done my TBAS and I hadn't done my medical before that reserve board. So it makes sense why I didn't get selected. I didn't even have any of the data. After that, I switched over, and I was like, maybe I'll have a better chance going active pilot, And so I went to an active. I was referred by my recruiter to the active officer recruit, and so she worked with me and sent me before the active board, the rated board. And you have two different types of boards. You have rated and non-rated. Rated are going to be all your flying positions or anything that's aeronautical. So like say ABM, which is Air Battle Manager, it's going to be pilot, or CISO, which is Combat Systems Officer, or it's going to be like an RPA pilot, which is remotely piloted aircraft. Those are like the drones and stuff. So those are going to be rated. Non-rated is going to be everything else. Engineering, med group, security forces, stuff like that. So the second board, like I said, was active duty Air Force. Tried to go for a pilot. And then you can list your other choices. And I put, second was CISO, third was ABM. And I didn't do RPA because I just didn't want to do that. I probably could have gotten it because there was a shortage. But I didn't want to do that. So after that, after waiting, and sorry if I keep messing with my nose because I'm sick, but after the second board, I didn't get selected for that. Now, typically between boards, you have to wait 6 months before going before another board. The following board, which was non-rated, was I think 2 months after I found out that I wasn't selected. So I had to get a waiver just in order to go before the non-rated board. So I was like, well, I'm going to try non-rated, and I'm going to try to go engineering because, if that's what my degree is in. And I was like, if I don't get it, then I'm not doing Air Force. I mean, this is over a period of about almost 2 years. So I Submitted my package. I think it was in November, November or October, and submitted my package like a month or so later. After I had, that was when I had found out that I didn't get selected for the pilot, and then like a month or so later, I submitted my package for the non-rated board. And like 3 months later, I found out that I had been selected as a 32E1G general engineer in the civil engineering group. So after like almost 2 years, pretty much like a year and a half, I guess, to be more exact, I was selected for officer training school. And then, yeah, and then I went to officer training school, and I got this. And officer training school, that could be an entirely different video. So depending on the feedback I get from y'all, any questions you want answered, I could do that in the next video. I know that the choice of going into the Air Force is a big choice, and then also officer versus enlisted is another choice. And also what to expect, especially if you're trying to go through officer training school. You know, you've got your degree, you've done your work. Education wise, I know there are a lot of questions that y'all have, and officer training school, from the videos I've looked at, they're kind of a general spectrum, but there aren't a lot of things really addressed. There's some things that I probably wouldn't talk about just to keep the suspense there, but at the same time, there are a lot of tips and stuff that I can go over. So the next video may be officer training school. So anyway, take care, keep them flying, and we'll talk to you later.